Recording in progress. Recording now.
Got it. Great. All right. I'm frozen. Welcome, everybody. This is the January 2023 meeting of Mansfield Sustainability Committee. I'm Lynn Stoddard, the chair, and we do have some guests that we're happy to have joining us today, and some new folks joining from the town of Mansfield. So let's do some quick introductions. Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Katie Fatoni. I'm the representative on sustainability from planning and zoning.
Thank you. Susanna, hi, long time no see.
It's so nice to see everyone and so good to be back. I'm Susanna Everett. I'm the sustainability representative from the Mansfield Public School Board, the K-8 public schools.
Yay. Lena, hi.
Hi, I'm Lena Hancock, and this is my first year on the Sustainability Committee. I'm a resident of Mansfield.
Yay, thanks. Hi, Josh. You able to say hello?
Hi there. Yes, I am gonna have to be off camera tonight, but Josh Walters, I am, like Lena, also a relatively new member of the Sustainability Committee and a resident of Mansfield.
Yes, and very welcome and valuable new members. And Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Lissy. I'm E.O. Smith's representative to the Sustainability Committee, and I also am a resident here in Mansfield as well.
Yay. Okay, and we're pleased to be joined by Alan. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Alan Corson with Facilities for the town of Mansfield. Listening in today for the Circa support presentation.
Excellent. And your colleague seems to have maybe disappeared for a minute, but he can introduce if he rejoins. And Ginny.
I am Ginny Walton, and I am the staff support person for this committee.
And our guest and presenter, Kurt, who will present after we do a couple more things. But Kurt, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Kurt Mayland, an energy lawyer, I guess, if I call myself a lawyer still with Circa.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I guess we called the meeting to order before all that. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the December 14th, 2022 meeting minutes. Are you raising your hand, Lena, or just moving around?
Sorry, I was just moving, but I can second that, or
you can first it. You can make the first motion. Thanks. Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Matt and Katie vying for second.
He can have it.
That's great. And any discussion of the minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye or raise your hand or both. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Josh, did you say yes? Gotcha. Okay. You any nays? No, because everyone voted aye, and abstentions no. So unanimously approved. Thank you very much. And yes, now we're on to the next item, which is Circa support. And I will turn it over to Kurt. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. All right, let me see if I can do this. All right, so you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So I'll try to, and you said about 10, 15 minutes or so?
Sure, that'd be great. And then, yeah, you can ask questions and dig in deeper if we want.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'll try to keep it fairly simple. So as you can see, my name is Kurt Mayland. I'm with part-time with Circa, actually really starting on Monday. For the most part, we've been sort of trying this program out since September. I've a long time energy and environment lawyer and developer of solar, wind, and batteries, and primarily, well, I say primarily in New England, but up and down the Eastern Seaboard. I also teach renewable energy law and policy at the law school and at the end of the master's program, and as an adjunct at Storrs for environmental law. And lately I've been not only, I guess, developing projects for myself and clients, but for municipalities in Connecticut. So mostly focused on landfills and the new Connecticut programs, which all sort of kind of led to working with some of my colleagues at the law school at Circa. So some people probably know a little bit more about Circa than I do, since I'm very new as of Monday. But I won't belabor it. But essentially, the first highlighted sentence sort of captures most of what Circa does, which is it's to increase the resilience and sustainability of communities vulnerable to the growing impacts of climate change on the natural, built, and human environments. And really, my understanding is it came about after Superstorm Sandy and the recognition that there were communities in Connecticut that were particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And also those communities might not be in the best position to deal with them or help prepare for them. So the legislature funded Circa, and it's a collection of researchers, scientists, lawyers, planners, engineers that are working on various projects around the state. And there was a growing recognition that not only was it important to work on things like stormwater infrastructure, but given the growing number of outages we're seeing around Connecticut and the general electricity problems we have, that it would be good to start to focus on what we call local energy resiliency, which might be a little different definition than what Eversource uses. There's my fancy slide that I like showing just because of all the graphics. So, what does it mean? To summarize, what we're really trying to do is at the core, what we'd like to do is, so the energy markets, the energy generation markets in Connecticut and elsewhere are primarily driven by, I would say, state programs. And under those state programs, they're largely left open to private developers, IPPs, to go out and figure out where they want to put those projects, which in turn usually means the easiest spots they can build and that bring them the highest rates of return. It's a business, and that little number at the bottom of their extensive financial model, which gives them the highest rate of return, usually dictates where they go. Which sort of, in our opinion, when we were talking about building this program, sort of flew in the face of the intentions of the state in developing these incentive programs and where these types of facilities were most needed. So we thought it would be helpful to come in and sort of, but to work with municipalities on letting them sort of drive the program as opposed to reacting to proposals from developers who might be coming in to do a simple solar project on farmland or on some municipally owned land, and municipalities are left in a position of just reacting to it. They might not be the best spots or the best use of federal and state money for a project like that. So in the purest of all worlds, we're going to really focus on communities that experience a high number of outages. We call them grid edge communities, and the Yukon Eversource partnership, the center up there, does a good job of sort of mapping where these communities are. Also focusing on distressed municipalities and environmental justice communities, and ideally within those on the particular buildings that might need, call it grid resiliency the most. So think of a senior center or a hospital or something that when a storm comes, it would be ideal if not only they had backup power, but some sort of backup power that was also clean energy oriented. So that would be great. Think about a solar battery microgrid or even a hydrogen powered fuel cell. That's sort of the mecca. But along the way, we're also recognizing that, you know, a solar project on a landfill or a standalone battery project might also accomplish all these goals, such as just getting a cleaner grid, a more resilient grid where generation is created locally, so we're not utilizing a lot of long distribution lines that come down in storms and things like that. So we're not just shooting for the mecca. We're also going to work with towns on, let's call it renewables generally, to give them idea of where all the money is, how they can access it, and if they want to utilize private developers or not, sort of helping them to navigate that process. The other, so a lot of this too, not only was it that recognition that private industry is really driving where these projects are getting constructed, which is being driven by economics almost exclusively, was in August, the Inflation Reduction Act passed, which made a bunch of changes, which could be very helpful to Connecticut municipalities in particular. I'm not going to go into great detail on what they are, but you know, this is federal funding. Much of the federal funding is driven by tax credits, and unfortunately, in the past, well, I shouldn't say in the past, tax credits can only be used by entities that actually pay federal income taxes. So to take advantage of some of these tax credits, municipalities were sort of forced to work with private industry. And under the Inflation Reduction Act, there's now the possibility of a municipality doing a project on its own and getting that, starting that 30% tax, what was formerly a tax credit, now in cash. They call it the direct pay option. Now, not that I think municipalities should go ahead and finance huge solar and battery and other projects, but it does give you the option of doing that. It also created a brand new tax credit. And when I say tax credit, think of like a $1 million energy project. You're getting to start 30% of those project costs back from the federal government as a credit, not a deduction, as an actual credit. So I think it's almost cash. And at times that can go up to 40% if a certain amount of the manufactured material is domestically manufactured. And it can even go up to 50% if you're in, if you're on a brown field, if you're in a defined low income community. So think about it, half your project costs can be financed by the federal government after IRA. And these programs are really designed to stay in place for about 10 years. So they're no longer in flux. What's going to happen? Are they going to get ramped down? We know until about 2034 or so that these benefits are going to be out there. So extremely helpful to the energy industry. Developers are extremely savvy on all of this stuff and how to take advantage of it. For obvious reasons, towns not so much so. So that was a big incentive, like, hey, we got a huge pile of federal money. The renewable energy industry has been rejuvenated for the next 10 years. So this is also good timing to start up the program we did at Circa. So on top of that, not only do you have the federal programs, but Connecticut's also been very good about incentivizing solar and batteries and fuel cells, and I think what they call their sustained and orderly fashion, which is the right way to do things. And in some of these programs, and you might have gotten calls from solar developers about these, there are mandates that the projects be sited on municipal, state, or ag land, some of the most alluring projects for private developers. So just be aware that solar and fuel cell projects located on Mansfield-owned buildings and land are particularly valuable in the state of Connecticut. I don't want to go into too much detail about how that works, but on top of that, there's also an extra value from the state that's provided for projects located in distressed municipalities, which I don't think Mansfield is considered one of those, but also for carports, brownfields, and landfills. You get sort of a 20% bidding advantage if you cite one of your projects on those. There's also a separate program. Again, I don't want to get too into the weeds here. It's Connecticut's version of community solar, which is really just a straight up energy project, but Eversource on the back end takes a certain portion of the benefits and distributes them to various customers in an order of priority, the top order of priority being low-income residential customers. But, and those also, projects on carports, well, canopies, I repeat myself, brownfields and landfills are also prioritized in that particular program. And the only other two aspects of this I want to mention, that's Connecticut's also developed an interesting, and this was prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, a very interesting program to encourage battery storage, in particular battery storage not necessarily coupled with solar. And some of you may have heard about batteries and how, you know, they're the solution to the intermittency of renewable energy. Not quite there yet. I always show that picture because your average battery that's purchased on the market today, which is, by the way, takes about a year to get because of the backlog, dispatches right now somewhere between 2 and 4 hours. So when people think of batteries as this great backup source, I always laugh and be like, well, not really, but in a big battery that can dispatch for a long time looks like that, which is a battery that has a lot of little batteries daisy chained together and stacked on top of each other. And that's what gives you that longer duration battery. But they do provide other incentives, such as the big one that a lot of folks target is, you know, Connecticut and other states have times of the year, I think in the middle of July, 2 o'clock in the afternoon when it's 95 degrees and humid out, where we're using the peak amount of power. And at those times right now, ISO New England has to call on these things called peaker plants, which are usually gas-fired plants that are inefficient and expensive to compensate or make up for all that power that's needed. So they pollute. They're usually I wouldn't say usually, but often they're near environmental justice neighborhoods, and they're expensive. So batteries are certainly available to dispatch power during peak periods, you know, especially coupled with solar. So that's one of the advantages of batteries, but there's a number of other sort of resiliency advantages for batteries. But so Connecticut's got a fairly vibrant program that encourages batteries. That can be part of a hospital, part of a senior center, part of a town hall. It's oversubscribed now, but that's usually the case with energy programs. They get oversubscribed and then they are extended. But along with, you know, the Connecticut incentives, which if, you know, roughly provide an upfront payment for about half the battery cost, you also get a 30% federal tax credit or direct pay for the battery. So you can start to imagine adding those two numbers together, a good chunk of your battery will be paid for, and you can utilize it for your own purposes in the building to help lower some of your electric costs also. And then the last, you know, I'm not, you know, to be fully transparent, I don't know as much about fuel cells as I will tomorrow at this time when I have a long meeting with a fuel cell manufacturer on some of their benefits. Connecticut is very big on fuel cells. We have, I think, 2 companies at least headquartered here. They traditionally operate on natural gas, which is why a lot of folks sort of separate them from other renewables. But increasingly, there are more innovations and incentives to have them powered by, you know, hydrogen. So fuel cells, especially if you have a natural gas line going to a building, could be certainly at the very least a more efficient and environmentally friendly backup source and stable source at times, other than like a gas or diesel generator. But so the nutshell is, there's just there's a lot of stuff out there, and I probably really confused you. And that's sort of the goal, is there's a ton of federal money. There's a lot going on in the state, and sort of navigating your way through all that can be daunting. So that's what we're here for, is to walk you through, either in response to, hey, we've got 15 letters sitting here from different energy developers who want to do the following. Can you help explain this to us? To, hey, do you have particular buildings you want us to take a look at and provide recommendations for how to start the process on getting them either powered by renewables or powered by renewables, and ideally able to island when the grid goes down, and so they can continue to operate. But I think that's kind of the nutshell. It's a lot, but there's a lot out there, and Connecticut's program is nuanced, and the federal government's program is complicated, and that's the stuff we're hopefully good at. So any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. So if folks have questions, just feel free to unmute. We're a small group. Got Matt, go ahead.
I have a question about, so it sounds like everything you talked about is solely for municipalities. There's nothing for individual homeowners. Is that correct?
No, there's quite a bit. We just don't focus on that at Circa. Maybe the Connecticut Green Bank or another resource, or a residential builder would be better at that. But there's certainly everything I mentioned in terms of tax credits is applicable to homeowners. And then Connecticut's got its own incentives for residential buildings that are separate from the programs I briefly mentioned. And then the nice thing about Connecticut, I mean, if you're a homeowner or you're a private business owner, I say the nice thing and the bad thing is our rates are so high that putting solar, put it this way, I don't know what you got. I don't know what I haven't even looked at what my latest electricity bill per kilowatt hour is, but it's got to be in the mid-20s. And if it were to stay in the mid-20s per kilowatt hour, and you were to put solar on your roof, along with the tax credit, along with these things called renewable energy certificates, I mean, you could probably pay the system off in about 5 years in terms of electricity savings. I mean, no one believes electricity prices are going to stay this high, but it's
I'll
high.
tell you, I was asking because now there's supposedly another rate hike coming for homeowners here in January on the portion of January's bill. $80 to $100 is what people are saying. And Eversource is, reporting record profits, of course, this whole time. And yet now they need to increase every single house by $80 to $100. And anybody on a fixed income, retired people, it's killing people. And I always like the incentive piece. It's expensive to go to renewable energies, but you have the incentives, and I always like that encouragement because it kind of keeps things positive. The flip side is, make it so expensive that the previously more expensive alternative energies now are by default cheaper. And it seems like that's the route we're going. And in the meantime, the stockholders and Eversource people are going to make a lot of money on the backs of everyday working people and people who, are retired and or disabled and not able to work. But so that's what I was curious. Do you have any insight as to why they keep increasing the rates, other than they want more money, which we know they do?
Well, supposedly, I shouldn't say supposedly. The reason this time the rates went up is because they're not allowed. So they bought your bill has a bunch of components on it. You pay for the power itself that's generated. You pay for the power that goes on those big transmission lines. You pay for the power to be moved around in the substation and moved up and down. You pay for the power to be brought to your home. There's transmission, distribution, all these different charges. But the generation charge, which is called the supply charge, That's the one charge Eversource is not allowed to mark up. So they go out and buy power or generate power, and then they have to sell it back to you at the exact same price. So based on that, they're not making any more money than they were in December. That's about all I know. I don't know the details more than that, but I believe that you're going to get a bill in the next 2 or 3 days. I just got my first bill. I got them emailed, and they went up. Mine went up about $150 from last month. I think that's due to a rate hike that was previously approved by Pura, and I believe they go back in 6 months, and I think they're going to come back down, but don't quote me on that. They should. Nobody believes that that power and that the supply charge in Connecticut can stay in the low 20s for much more than 6 months. But we'll see. Connecticut's in a tough spot. It's sort of an energy island, if you will, because of where we stand with natural gas, as opposed to like Pennsylvania and other states. So.
And the other thing I was wondering, is there any talk at the state level of Connecticut? I know that you have to be connected to the grid right now, but as more people get solar and as more people get battery, it seems like it would. Now I understand the advantage. You want to have everybody connected. You can draw off their batteries. They get a kickback for that. But from what I understand in Connecticut, you have to maintain your connection to the grid per se. Is there any talk at the state about looking at that again?
I don't think you have to. I think
there's a couple towns you don't have to, but
yeah, you could build a house and just put
can.
a battery and solar on it. As I said, the problem now is everything is compounded by long-term duration batteries don't exist right now. So you have to buy a lot of batteries to give yourself backup power if your solar goes down. And the other problem that nobody wants to talk about is solar's not very good in the wintertime. So to recharge that battery during the day, as opposed, while you're not using that power in the middle of January, is not achievable right now unless you really oversize your solar. So, the theory that batteries are going to be the perfect backup source to solar and wind, and we're going to be able to go off fossils is good, but we're not there yet as far as the technology, at least when it comes to batteries. But yeah, I don't think there's any rule that says you can build a house and not tie into the grid. I think you probably want to still.
All right. So Katie had a question. Then we'll go to you, Josh. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. It's more of a comment. I worked for 30 years in the telecommunications industry, and I know that Eversource cannot put up their rates unless they go to your public utilities group. Mm-hmm. And this is just a comment that you should be writing your letters to your politicians, because they're the ones that appoint these public utility commissions and allow the increases. The PUC is another part of government, and it's supposed to be there looking for the consumer, looking out for the consumer. But a lot of times they have a tendency to go more political than economical. And I do know that, I at least I know in Maine, you had to jump through hoops to get an increase in anything. You had to really document why you had to go up on your prices. And so, like I said, I'm just making a comment, having been around it, having done proposals for rate increases. I understand it. Write letters to your Congress people and get new people on your Public Utilities Commission.
Well, there was last year, a couple of years ago when everybody's power went out for 4 or 5 days and trees came down and there was this huge uproar because prices had just gone up. The legislature convened, had a special session, and one of their big focuses was Eversource and responsiveness and communication with towns. And they came down pretty hard on them with fines and new rules. But I don't know, if they're going to do anything this session with respect to the prices, or if they can. The only other thing I would mention too as a town, and I'm not pitching any particular group, but sometimes I know some towns were very fortunate and had worked with, I'll call them energy brokers or energy consultants, and their job is to pick through, Connecticut's got I think 30 or so alternative energy suppliers. By the way, you still have to pay the cost to get the power delivered from Eversource, but that supply charge can come from somebody else. And they could be pretty creative. I know a couple towns that were fortunate enough to lock in at 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour for 3 or 4 years. And they're locked in at that through 2024, while everyone else is paying 24. So they're not, they're sometimes worth their weight in gold. As consultants, they can really go through your bills and pick the right situation for you, if that's something you don't have now.
Okay, so Josh had a comment, and then in the interest of time, we'll try to focus any comments on how Mansfield as a town can take advantage of these programs, and any questions related to Kurt on that. And I have one, and Alan and Bill might as well. So Josh, go ahead.
Sure. I just very quickly wanted to just confirm what Kurt was saying to Matt, that in terms of residences in the town, the current programs in Connecticut, they require you to be connected to the grid during normal events. But if there were a extreme weather event coming, your house can go into an island mode where it's purely as a backup. So I think that probably gets at what Matt was talking about in the concern. So the distribution utilities would only pull on your battery when you, in theory, wouldn't be needing it. So I just wanted to just add that piece.
Thanks, Josh. Alan or Bill, any questions spurred by thinking about projects in Mansfield?
Mine would probably be more around a fuel cell, and whether at one time they were fairly cost prohibitive. Is that with the incentives gotten so it's a lot better?
It's a good question. I don't know. I know that the fuel cells get the same federal incentives we do, so it's gotten better than it was last year. But as I said, I'm starting my own learning process tomorrow. So we could certainly talk about that. It's just been for whatever reason, I think it's just for politics and employment and things like that Connecticut is hyper focused on fuel cells. So I've got to get up to speed, but I don't know enough about them. They've always been seen as sort of an impure source of energy compared to the other renewables. So I've let them sort of slide by.
Yeah, I mean, we use natural gas to feed 2 cogeneration plants, and typically they're also limited on size of what their rating is. So that's tends to be another problem for us. But if the size has changed of them, where they're bigger than 100 kW and so on, then definitely more interest in that.
Yeah, and we could do, we're not adverse to doing sort of the plain vanilla energy projects either in a town. It's like, if you've got a landfill, if you've got a piece of land, if you've got some rooftops and you've been getting calls and emails from solar developers or battery folks, we can be helpful there. Even if I always say, sometimes those are fun to build now while the money's good. Prices are starting to come down too, as far as construction. They've been prohibitively expensive, even with all these benefits, because of what we're seeing with inflation. Folks have been slow walking the construction. But now that things are coming down, you can build some of the simpler stuff while building, the underlying infrastructure for batteries when they get better and things like that. Or for, not necessarily my area of electric expertise, but for EV charging stations and things like that. there's certainly a lot of funding available for those too.
Are you doing any projects where you're combining the re-roofing of a building with solar?
Not right now, but I know that there are possibilities of incorporating a chunk of the re-roofing costs into the solar category so you can take advantage of the tax credits. I know that's a possibility. I don't know if the entire re-roofing can be incorporated as can be categorized as part of the solar construction, but certainly a good chunk of it.
Okay.
I have a question. Alan shared with us recently a ton of renewable projects happening in Mansfield, which are awesome. And thanks for your leadership on that, Alan. I'm just curious, Kurt, if something's already somewhat underway, is there and then this is such a changing landscape, the incentives and is there is there a point of no return when you've already started that or signed the deal, or could you apply for these incentives to give you a better deal on something that's kind of in the hopper? Is there anything you know about that?
That's a good question. I don't think so. At the federal level, under the Inflation Reduction Act, if you're not completed, if you're not a commercial operation, I think you're completely eligible for all of the new benefits that are in place. But don't quote me on that. I can't see. Usually commercial operation is the trigger for the tax credits. And, for instance, if you can, I don't want to go too into the weeds, but I think on the federal level, you're probably fine. A lot of the rules are still being written by Treasury and the IRS. So you might have to wait a little bit, but as long as your COD hasn't been achieved yet, you should be all right. Now in Connecticut, the question is, do you want to drop out of a program you're in now into another program? You're probably you probably can, but you'd have to just bird in hand versus the risk of not getting into the new program, because the new programs they increased the size of both the main solar programs last year. They doubled them, but they're still highly competitive. So you might not get in, and you might have given up where you are now. So that's a tough question. That's a tough decision. I would say stick with if everything works with what you're in now, I would stay with it now, where you are now.
Yeah. And how much hand holding or what support does Circa provide for town? So this is great, helping us understand things, but is there a deeper level of direct support to towns on projects?
It's a good question. I have to ask Jim and Joe, my two supervisors, but my personal preference would be to be available and on board through to commercial operation, so that, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong that seem simple along the way. I'd want to be there. If it was something I had started, I'd want to be there to make sure it was done and done right. So nutshell, classic would be, we might be able to run, again, I have to double check, but we'd have to run, we could look at the project, come to a conclusion on whether it was viable or not, decide, with you all whether or not the town would want to do it, or simply let a private entity run with it, and then run the process of selecting that entity and making sure the financial benefits and other benefits that the town were to receive were maximized, and then make sure that whatever type of agreement, a lease or a PPA, was drafted correctly, but without necessarily acting as your lawyer, but just making sure all the right things were taken care of. Those can get very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Like your average commercial real estate attorney, it just doesn't have the industry background to navigate one of those things against a good solar lawyer. It gets, unfortunately, you know, renewables is almost more in the commercial real estate world than it is the environmental world. So, and I'm not putting down commercial real estate developers, but you tend to get some interesting characters. And as I said, it becomes about maximizing the rate of return and the bottom line versus making a customer happy. So one of the issues I have, for instance, and we're trying to develop this into a slightly legislative role, is the state does a nice job of incentivizing, let's just make it simple, a solar developer to go into a distressed municipality and build a project there. They give them, let's just call it a 20% benefit. So if somebody else would make 10 cents a kilowatt hour in Mansfield, in Hartford, they make 12 cents a kilowatt hour because they want projects in Hartford because it's a distressed municipality. But guess what? Do you think the developer, just out of the kindness of his heart, is going to take that excess money and pay more taxes or give them a better deal on a power purchase agreement? It doesn't happen. So there's a gap there. And the federal government did the same thing too. They're shoving everybody into these low and middle income communities and giving them tax benefits, but there's no mechanism forcing these entities, and it just doesn't happen. They're not passing these benefits down. So we're trying to figure out a way to maybe propose some fixes at the legislative level this year.
Interesting. Ginny, so you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I know this committee has talked about solar canopies and the viability of placing solar canopies at E.O. Smith High School, maybe the middle school, town hall. And so what kind of support could Circa provide for that? And
You know,
in collaboration with facilities.
Yeah, I mean, they're just, you know, they're just ground mounted solar projects up high, right? So the primary, I mean, the nice thing is in both the solar programs, the principal solar programs, there's you get a 20% adder. I think my lights just went off, unless they're kicking me out here. So they're trying to make them affordable. Now, right now, steel prices are too high, so no one's actually building carports unless they're building them at very low margins. They're just not that attractive. But you know, everything's going to come back down eventually. So yeah, we can help with the basics of working with the different carport installers, letting you understand maybe the best places to build them in terms of stormwater issues and frankly location to the right electrical infrastructure. If you can site them closer to the right wires that are in existence, you're going to save yourself a lot of digging and trenching money and things like that. And then really helping you work with an installer and find the right program to get into. We can certainly, you know, help you in that regard.
Josh.
Thanks. As someone who loosely works in this area, the sheer volume of things coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act and the other laws that have been passed are just like completely overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And as the committee member who volunteered to start looking into these opportunities for the committee, you know, it is just like overwhelming. I was wondering if Circa has any current resources right now where it's just like categories, like if a municipality is interested in this,
yeah,
here's somewhere to go look. Because even that level of support, I feel like would go a really long way that's like the first step in helping us come to you then and say, hey, we saw this, let's talk about that.
Yep. No, you're killing me here because that's something I'm supposed to be doing. We started to work on the Inflation Reduction Act, and I was going to put together, hopefully, what will be an annually updated guide for municipalities on state and federal incentives on the various we're calling it local grid resiliency initiatives. So yes, that is not available now, but I'm about halfway through at the moment. There are some good, I mean, yeah, it's daunting. I mean, it's daunting. People, every day something new comes up. As I was trying to understand the incentives for fuel cells, and my mind was spinning. And then, you know, trying to understand, for instance, there's a healthy tax credit, 20% on top of the 30%. If all of your benefits, all of the electrical discounts go to low-income communities. And so trying to understand whether that matched up with the Connecticut Community Solar Program, and talking to Pure about it was, you know, there's a lot of interesting things out there, but I forget how many pages it was, 700 and something page bill that we're trying to sort through still. But yeah, we're working on that. Nutshell is that's one of my work products I have to produce, and ideally in the next couple months. Awesome, thank you.
Well, you're very nice to come to us like on the eve of starting the job and let us.
Well, I've been doing it, but like special payroll, we've been sort of, they're testing me out, I'm testing them out. One of those.
Appreciate it. We need to move on. Luckily we don't have too many other agenda items, but does anyone have any last quick questions for Kurt?
Well, if you want me to swing down, you know, whenever after this is over, and either, you know, walk a property, take a look at a building, kind of kickstart the process. We plan on sort of getting stuff done while we're putting together the background material. So, you know, that's the fun part. Just let me know.
Ah, oh, we'll probably take you up on that. That'd be fun. Look to Alan for needs on that. So thank you very much. This was really helpful. Great to have you. Great to hear more about all this stuff. As one of my friends who used to work for Amory Lovins says, we're confused at a higher level. That's great. Yeah, and that's the point. It's like, it's, as Josh said, it's not just the federal stuff, but the loopholes and the little things you can miss in the, I just learned something new today. You know, if you want the 20% adder that you would otherwise get from building in Hartford or Bridgeport or Winston, you can also get that if I were to locate a project in Mansfield and send all the benefits over there. So it's new stuff every day, you know. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we're grateful that you are figuring all the translations out. Half of it at least. Yeah. And we'll look forward to working with you hopefully in the future. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a few more things. I think they're pretty quick. So climate action resolution, I'll report on that. We talked about it last time. Alan had and Ryan had come in November and reported on a lot of good stuff happening, the facilities needs assessment and all the great solar stuff. I corresponded, based on our conversation last month, I corresponded with Ryan and said that the committee would love to also know about the other things in the resolution, specifically that the resolution directed each department in the town to look at, basically to come up with a priority list for greenhouse gas reduction actions within their purview, and looking at old plans and stuff like that. So this is all, of course, contributing to getting the town operations to net zero carbon by 2030, which is the crux of the resolution. So I didn't get around to that until just a couple of days ago. So we'll see Ryan's response to that, and I offered the help and support of our committee in any way. And then Ginny and I talked about sustainable CT. As you all know, I'm wear a couple of hats. I'm the executive director of that program, as well as the chair of this committee. So in terms of like really specific helping the town work on actions to achieve gold, I need to, or any certification, I need to recuse myself from that. So we talked about kind of going to an every other month focus of the committee. So January, for example, we're having a general meeting on resources and other things, and interacting with town departments and committees that we often do, and some of our own efforts within the community, like Katie has often spoke about, her postings on Facebook about waste reduction and whatnot, which is awesome. So we'll continue that way. And then every other month, so I don't know, we can start in February perhaps, a core group, it can be all of you, or as many would like, of this committee can kind of work to start mapping out kind of some next steps on sustainable CT. I will recuse myself from that. However, my staff is fully available to help the town because that's what we do. We help towns. So I'm just like, because of potential conflict of interest, I'm going to hand that to someone else on my team. So Ginny is connected with our staff to start that conversation. And Ginny, did you want to add anything else on that at this point?
Well, I guess I'd like to ask, is does the committee want to, starting with the February meeting, start working on strategizing as to how the town can achieve gold certification for 2025? It'd be. So if the town manager and mayor have signaled that they would like the town to do this. And so in order to do this, there needs to really be a strategy to do it, because it's a big reach. It really is. So so is that, it was mentioned at the last meeting, potentially doing every other month, focused on sustainable CT. Lynn would not be a part of that meeting. Maybe one of the staff members of sustainable CT could join us for the February meeting, or it could just be a meeting amongst members to discuss where we want to go with this.
Go ahead,
So,
Josh.
Sure. So, I don't know if I'm going to specifically answer your question, Jenny, but I know for one thing that I could really benefit from is, I know we had a kind of overview before, like toward the beginning of when I first got on, but I could really use a refresher before we launch into anything on sort of where we are, what the categories are that might move us forward, just sort of like a reorientation. Because I think that if we could get that, maybe it doesn't even have to necessarily be the first meeting, but in the first couple, that would, I think, make the process a lot more efficient. And then in terms of like timing, I think I volunteered to be one of the co-chairs, so I should be available next month, and I'm happy to start that process next month, depending on what everyone else thinks.
Can I ask a quick question? Remind me again, isn't gold new? Is that a new?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So that's also, that would be a great overview thing too, or like sort of what the additional pieces are, and maybe even a little bit about, the rationale around some of those pieces. And yeah, I'm excited about it though.
And, it would be great to take time to show the committee the actions that the town has taken this past certification cycle, and 3 years ago as well. Like, what are we doing? What's up with the town? So do you think, would you like me to invite Jess Leclerc? Would you like me to ask Jess Leclerc, who works for Sustainable CT, if she can join us at the next meeting to give an overview of gold certification? And also we can then dive into what the town has done up to this point. I mean, some of our actions are long lasting, and they can be applied to future certifications, like plans, for instance. The Mansfield Tomorrow Plan is an example. So,
That sounds good to me. Yeah, I think that's consistent with what I was thinking.
okay.
All right, excellent. Any further conversation on that? Okay, so Shinny will work with Sustainable CT staff, and next meeting in February will focus on that, which is great. Let's see, we have a standing agenda item next, which is the things we all voiced when we met together in front of the town hall around the picnic table, of things we'd like to see happening in our town on sustainability, and like are interested in working on. So if this is just kind of, if anyone has anything they want to report on or look for support from anyone else on the committee, here's the moment. Katie, hi.
I've got a couple more articles to go out on Facebook. I get a little bit of criticism from time to time, but I look at it that's not a bad thing, because at least it's got people thinking. And maybe they will think the next time they go to the grocery store and have a plastic bag or something like that. The next two that I'm going to do about, one is going to be paper towels versus rags. There's been a lot of controversy about whether or not to use rags or whether or not to use paper towels. Now they've got plant-based paper towels out now, but guess what a tree is? A plant. So I sort of take exception with that. And I'll let you get on Facebook and read it. And the other one is on talking about supporting scientists to look into ways that we can sort of disintegrate plastic or find more ways to use it, make it more economical to recycle. If you could save a buck in recycling, and it costs the town, it costs companies, stuff like that. And some people just say, to heck with it, it's too cost prohibitive for me to keep, recycling stuff. And so I got a couple more articles going out, so hopefully it'll get people talking again.
You're so inspiring. Thanks,
Thank you.
Katie. You are getting people thinking. If they respond, even if it's a little negative, they've noticed it and are thinking. So
Yes.
I think it's super cool what you're doing.
Thank you.
Could I, and I won't take up meeting time, but Katie, maybe I can communicate with you via email about plastics.
Good. Yes.
That's an expert resource.
Please do.
Great. Okay, so we're at 7:01. There on the agenda, you'll see some upcoming events that other towns are doing. We talked about it last time on energy efficiency and heat pumps. So please share the word and attend those as you like. And any future agenda items, does anyone want to suggest anything for, we've talked about the February meeting, anything specifically about the March meeting on your minds? It's a long way away. That's like almost the end of winter.
Well, one thing that was brought up, Josh had brought up, was having a speaker talk about hydrogen as a form of source of energy. So I don't know if that's something that the committee would like to to learn about at the March meeting? And if so, if Josh has connections with a person who might speak on it?
Thoughts?
I don't know if I have a connection per se, but there may be someone at UConn we could, I think Peter was gonna I'm trying to remember back.
Hmm.
I
Well,
can try to touch base with someone at UConn who may know before that meeting.
okay. Why don't we, leave it that if people come across a resource, or if you want to do some research on it, we can investigate that for whatever month is appropriate and the person's available. Excellent. Okay. Any final things? All right. Sorry we went 3 minutes over, guys. Ew, it's a bad way to start the New Year's. I'm like tainting my record. But thank you for your patience. It was an interesting meeting and really informative. And it's great to see you all. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
So
Year
motion to
you.
adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a great evening. Bye.
Bye.